Lexi is the head of blockchain and digital currency strategies at Discover Financial Services. And Siju is the VP product and strategy at the Canadian Tire Corporation, and he's driving innovation there. So Dean is the Sterling Bay person who envisioned this building and Lincoln Yards, and he really has a whole kind of concept of how it's not so abstract how Web3 meets the physical world. So we asked him to moderate this panel. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. I'm Dean Marks, Managing Principal at Sterling Bay. I want to start out thanking Brian and Keith from Bridgealt and Paul from Decasonic for hosting this conference and for letting me moderate this panel instead of serve on it. A lot easier to ask the questions than answer them. I did ask them to turn the air up from Meat Locker to Brisk Fall Day. Hopefully it's warmed up a little bit. The last thing I want to say is I want to give a shout out to the Sterling Bay intern class who's here wrapping up their summer with us in the back. If anybody has any questions for Sterling Bay about Web3, crypto, or blockchain, please direct them to the interns. Okay, with that said, I'd like to get into this panel, Web3 meets the physical world, where I at least understand half of the subject matter. Lexi, Siju, thank you, both of you. So we're going to start out with, how do you see Web3 technologies bridging the gap between the digital and physical world for both of you? Lexi, let's start with you.
Sure, thank you so much, Dean. And I just wanted to clarify also, I was formerly with Discover. More recently, I've been doing independent consulting in the payments and fintech sphere. So I just wanted to clarify that before we get started. But I really like this question because I think we always think about physical and digital as these two almost like distinctive worlds, that there's really no overlap between them, and that our digital footprint and our physical footprint don't really have that much in common. But I think what's really unique about Web3 and a lot of the new infrastructure that's being built around it is that it's sort of ascribing more of a tangible value to some of those digital assets, and by assets, not just digital assets, but our whole histories that we have online. And it's giving more people the ability to be able to monetize, say, their digital presence and identities. So what I'm really excited about a lot of Web3 and blockchain and what other cryptocurrencies can promulgate is really this more melding together of our digital and physical lives, and then also creating new value streams and monetization opportunities in that kind of physical world.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you.
Siju, same question.
Thanks, Dean. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's great to see you all. Quick clarification, I'm VP of Innovation and Strategy in Metlinks. I'm advising a few companies, Canadian Tire is one of them. And I love technology, I love researching, I love learning about it. It's never ending. There's so much to learn, so much to discuss. These conferences make it possible for us to share our ideas. I'm not an expert in all the places. I've got knowledge, experience that I'd like to share with you all. I might not have answers to a lot of questions you might have, but I like to hear them. Maybe I can go home and work on that. I think the topic is so interesting and so relevant, digital and physical. I think when we think of physical coming into the digital space, one mistake that we generally make is we try to replicate the exact physical form in the digital form. I think we are failing to understand that we probably haven't spoken to users. We don't know what they really need, and many times they don't know what they need. So you need to introduce something new, put in front of them, let them use it, see how they respond to it. So that collaboration is super important. And we often rely on larger organizations to lead such kind of collaboration. They are the ones who's setting that or bringing the community and then doing it if they do it. And so we're so reliant on that. And that is one of the many contributions from Web3 decentralized approach. For example, a community can come together with an idea and they can drive ideas, innovation, and they can, so the entire democratization is possible through this channel. So that is one of the biggest contribution that I feel like you're empowering the people to come up with innovation. You're not waiting for individual entity to come up with innovation. I have an idea. How can I bring that idea into the reality? Like that's an opportunity.
So let's talk about, I'd like to jump in for 1 second, bring an idea into reality, because like a real-time example from earlier today. So we're in this lovely building that we built, and when we designed it 4 years ago, we had to have it rendered to show to lenders and partners, okay? And 4 years ago, we would send that rendering job offshore and wait and pay tens of thousands of dollars, and it would come back weeks, months later. And this morning, I just went through renderings for a different project, and it took an hour and a half, and we did it internally ourselves in our office with AI, and it was mind-boggling how quickly it happened and changed, and we don't have to send $50,000 out the door anymore. So you talk about bridging the gap and bringing ideas to reality. It's real-time happening right now, for at least my industry. So.
Impact is immense. Use cases are plethora. There's so many. Education sector, health sector, like in the medical sector, we often rely on anatomy. We got the body. There's so much of you can change that. I have a contact in Brazil. They built an anatomy of dog. They're building an anatomy of human. It's not new. It's not them doing this for the first time. There's so many people doing. But just think of that simple use case. So there are many such use cases, and they are just 5 to 6 members from medical who got inspired. They started building together. So such contribution to society is possible through this channel.
I'm going to come back to medical and healthcare with you in a second. Lexi, I wanted to ask you quickly, most of the people in this building, despite the population that's in here, have not been in crypto as long as you have. What practical applications are you the most excited about that you see coming?
Yeah, so I've been in this space for nearly a decade, and originally I actually got involved by helping create the Illinois Blockchain Initiative, and I was very excited at that point in time about a lot of the potential public sector use cases. So what Illinois was looking at that time, and one of the pilots that they were able to do through the Blockchain Initiative was actually looking at feasibility for putting land titles and deeds on a blockchain. And so at that point in time, that was many years ago, there was less robust infrastructure around doing that through NFTs or on other layer 2s, layer 1s like Ethereum. And so we had actually been looking at it, this was this long ago, that it was using the colored coin protocol on Bitcoin, if any of you remember that. So some of those use cases that had to do with more in the identity space, and another idea that we were looking at was birth and death certificates on a blockchain to be able to authenticate those. Obviously, being in Chicago and this being an election year, there have been kind of rumored pasts of people who are not with us voting.
Welcome to Chicago.
Exactly. Yeah. So being able to actually authenticate someone's birth and also death in a more transparent way seemed to me something that could be potentially super intuitive. And so those were things where you would need private sector innovation to work with the public sector as kind of the recorder of a lot of those types of certifications and pieces of our identity to be able to become involved. But something that I've kind of become more passionate about recently, especially after having worked at several different startups, and then most recently having been at Discover at one of the largest credit card networks in the world, is how we can kind of make more tangible some of the more payments-specific applications. So obviously, digital identity is a big part of that, but I'm really excited about how Web3 can make different sorts of payments, whether they be international or payouts to smaller vendors, or kind of facilitating creator economies and sort of more democratizing payments, kind of like you were saying. Those are some of the things that are really exciting me nowadays.
Okay, I want to ask you a follow-up question. As a commercial real estate attorney, people come to me with tokenization of real estate propositions all the time. I always tell them that the thing that I think is most ripe for disruption is title insurance, okay? Multi-billion-dollar industry where I have to go into the basement of City Hall and look through records to determine who owns what when. And if that's not ripe for digitization and disruption, I really don't know what is, because I have to pay somebody to ensure the fact that I own my piece of property that probably hasn't changed in years. So I was just curious to hear that that was part of the Illinois Blockchain Initiative. I was wondering if that is going anywhere in your opinion, or where do you think it was left?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think interestingly, some of the issues that you see in some of these state initiatives and others besides Illinois that have taken a closer look at this is that there's a little bit of a kind of precursor that you need to putting things on a blockchain, which is just straight digitization of some of these records, kind of like you were talking about. So at a very first step, transferring from mostly paper-based systems that are siloed in many different locations, even just for one county's records. And interestingly, I think we've seen more progress on that front outside of the United States. Like there are several countries in Africa that have actually been able to do this at a kind of wider level because they sort of combined that digitization piece with putting those records directly onto a blockchain, and kind of we're able to leapfrog where we're at, where we're sort of in this quasi halfway digitization point where there's some that still exists physically, some that still exist digitally. So I think it's interesting. There are still some of those barriers that exist.
Okay, that's fascinating for me. CJ, you had alluded to the disruption that you were seeing in healthcare and medical. Can you talk about how Web3 is transforming industries like healthcare, retail, and supply chain management over the coming years?
Sure. I think Web3 is poised to revolutionize industry, many industry, almost all industry, I think. If I'm to speak about retail, healthcare, and supply chain again cuts through both the places.
Everything.
No?
Everything.
Yeah, exactly. I think when we talk about Web3, I think it's given that it's bringing transparency, it's bringing security, it's bringing efficiency. But it's going to be challenged by other technology as well. Like when quantum comes in, what happens to the security? There's so many puzzles that needs to be solved, and so there are no done answers right now. But there are predictions, there are hopes, and there are solutions that people are building around it. And so healthcare, I think. If I think of, I think we all can relate to it. My health record is so difficult for me to access. It's my data. I cannot just access my X-ray, and if you move point in time, it's so difficult. So I think accessing the healthcare records and me deciding which health provider should have access to it, and I should be able to pull it back. That's one simple use case, but there are many within the healthcare, the clinical trials, the trust that we have, the transparency of this blockchain brings this so easy for me to trust that this is how they started, this is the sampling, this is how it was done. And your monitoring of your devices, your pharmaceutical company making of those products. I think when I take a tablet, I check what are the different ingredients in it, and I feel smart about it. But then I don't know if I'm fooled, right? So can I go back? Can I find from what's the source and how was it done? I think you can do it through this technology. Many use cases, but I would move on to retail space. Loyalty is the biggest challenge. I don't know how many of us have signed up in so many different shopping experience. We've signed up, I think probably only 26% of the loyalty programs are properly consumed, and again, debatable. So that's a bigger challenge for the retail space. Like how do you retain, how do you ensure that loyalty that I earn in different brands within the organization, like Canadian Tire is a large organization, I don't know if you guys know it, they have many brands, and their loyalty, they were trying to tie together. Web3 is something that we're thinking. So there are many opportunities in that space. Your smart retail spaces is another one. Supply chain, again, is a bigger challenge there because predicting, like for example, for the Christmas inventory, the ship have already left many places, and we'll have the products in Canada. For Canadian Tire, I can speak that it will be somewhere in August. It'll be here, which means to say we can control that. There's so much of cost. There's so much of production that we can control with this when the transparency and everything comes into place. So I see supply chain cutting through all of these places. Transparency, security is the biggest contributor in this one.
I can empathize with the medical records example. I tried to share an MRI from one doctor to another across healthcare systems. It was like breaking into Fort Knox. It was insane. So we talked a little bit about healthcare and retail. Let's talk about finance a little bit. Lexi, how does a large corporation like Discover think about emerging technologies like Web3?
Yeah, so I think from Discover's perspective, they're sort of looking at this technology through several different lenses based on how the organization was constructed. So Discover's obviously known, very well known for their credit card, but they're also a payments network and a digital bank. So there are lots of different lenses that we were sort of looking through this, and one of them, being a digital bank, was honestly just from a regulatory and compliance perspective. I think we've kind of heard reference to this for most of the day, but since there still doesn't exist crystal clear clarity on the kind of Web3 space from a federal regulatory perspective, this has honestly caused a lot of hesitancy for some of the larger banks to really dive in full force into this space. That said, there are still a lot of areas in kind of more payments and other aspects of financial services that we were really interested in exploring. And so on the, just for a brief aside, on the compliance side, one of the things that we were able to deliver was just at the very forefront to allow customers to be able to use their debit card instruments to buy crypto from exchanges. So this seems like something that really should be much more intuitive, but it caused a lot of kind of introspection into looking at how are those transactions labeled, what happens if there's fraudulent activity. That just kind of cascaded a lot of other decisions that needed to be made, and some new honestly frameworks that needed to be created just around even allowing customers to then be able to hold and self-custody their own cryptocurrency. But some of the other areas that we were looking at as well, and like Siju was kind of making reference to, were in the rewards space. So Discover is known for their cashback bonus and rewards, and so we were looking at feasibility for being able to use their cashback bonus rewards to then buy and hold cryptocurrency. So that obviously created a lot of other questions, especially with regards to volatility of certain cryptocurrencies. Which exchanges prices are we going to use? Are we going to allow consumers to be able to self-custody and hold those on managed wallets through the organization? Will we just allow transference to other wallets? I think there's been a lot of evolution in this space with other payment processors in the years since we were looking at that specific use case, but those caused just a lot of considerations from a custody perspective. Additionally, from the rewards side, we were looking at feasibility of actually allowing for more interoperability between different rewards programs that Discover was able to offer, and how perhaps tokenizing some of those rewards might be able to ease some of that, that separate siloing of reward systems for customers, to be able to more transparently see where exactly they've got hotel points versus miles, and then maybe allow for some kind of transferability and transformation between those reward systems. So that was something interesting that we were looking at as well. Additionally, I would say that the two other larger areas were within digital identity and then payments alongside smart contracts. So from the digital identity side, we were looking at specifically how data consent in an open banking scenario might be able to be traced on a hybrid blockchain, and how that might actually provide more transparency for the consumers of how their identity is being used, not only in our financial institution, but at others that were kind of shared together. And so, that's just kind of a high-level overview, but there was a lot that we were looking at.
That's super interesting. So you both have brought up kind of loyalty and rewards programs as a future intersection of Web3 being applied in the real world. Is there one use case that you think is the most underappreciated of the intersection for Web3 use in the physical world? And if it's loyalty and rewards, we can just move on. But I was just curious if there's one that kind of flies under the radar that you think people are not paying attention to. The question's for both of you.
I might take a stab at this. I'm not sure if it's underappreciated necessarily, but I think that there is a lot more that we can be doing for kind of more mainstream creator economies, and allowing for them to use tokens to be able to monetize different aspects of their art. So this was actually something, and this use case was something that actually got me much more interested in the Web3 space when I was just starting. I have a background as a classically trained singer, and so I had a lot of musician friends who were trying to break into the traditional music industry and get deals with recording studios and those kinds of contracts, and then also we're trying to make money off of putting their music on certain streaming platforms. And as is kind of much more well known now, those contracts are not terribly generous for artists. And some of the bigger artist names that we know of right now, mainstream, like Beyonce, Taylor Swift, a lot of their money comes from these very high production touring and then also merchandising and advertising costs. And so you've got people who are very talented studio musicians, like say Beyonce's drummer, who is just as much a part of every record that she puts out, just as much a part of every performance that she puts together, but doesn't have the name recognition that she has to be able to leverage that for other brand deals, and really does have to make that money off of their own music. And so what certain tokenization opportunities can afford those types of musicians is really much more of a direct link with their audiences, so they can say, hey, I'm creating this really interesting collectible piece that commemorates the 10th anniversary of this album that I put together. You can connect much more easily with fans by using a token platform to be able to put out stuff like that. So that I think is something that I'm really excited about, and I think in the last few years we've seen much more infrastructure built around that, and I'm hoping that translates not only to the music industry but other areas of creativity as well.
The baseline of the creator economy right there, that's fantastic. Siju?
I think when we underappreciated, I would say the reason is AI came in. We were really doing good. People, although blockchain is so complex, it's difficult for people to wrap their head around it. I think there is a big need of creating simplify this, creating a good awareness, educate people on what this is bringing to the table. A lot of technologists don't know Web3, and like, what is Web3? I've never heard of that. So I feel like within the technology space itself, if there is lack of awareness, then the user community don't know what are we talking about. So I think that has led to a lot, like that lack of awareness and AI kicking in. AI actually solved that problem. OpenAI solved that problem. They brought the technology into the hands of people. They started speaking about it, and we all know where it went. So I think from that angle, virtual reality, AR and all is very underappreciated. People don't really understand what's the value it can bring. And I feel like if you just look at the movies, fantasy movies, like that's the reality. That is how it's going to be. And we like it or not, that's the new future is going to be. So a lot of use cases.
So what do you think will be the big accelerator for mainstream adoption of Web3 into the physical world?
I think you said, okay. So I think there are many factors that play a vital role. I think if you really understand why did we fail in that metaverse journey and the blockchain big time, there are many factors. I think awareness, like I said, is one, but you did not have great infrastructure. Like you need speed. The graphics were so crappy, and we were selling the idea of you can have a meeting with your members. It's so difficult for me to have a tough conversation with my team member in that cartoonic phase, right? Like I'm like, you did pathetic job. Like that doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't sit well. So graphics was bad here, so that needs to be solved. Bulky virtual reality headset, bad idea. So if you really see from those angles, it's really from the user-centric problems were not really solved. So it was going back to the old idea of, I want to sell this and I don't care what you need. That has to shift. It has to be buyer's market. So when you shift from that angle, you build products from the user-centered perspective. You only roll out that makes sense, that is relevant. And everything else which is irrelevant at that point is only to educate the users, help them understand how this works. It's like how shoes were introduced in places where shoes were not. So in I don't know if you guys know, but a lot of stories in Africa where Bata introduced, they wanted to penetrate that market. So what they did, they started just giving away all the used shoes to those people, start using it. Once they got used to it, then they started selling shoes. So you need to educate, you need to bring them into that world, and then you actually can sell something. But that's one biggest area. The next is really the technology that builds everything around. Web3 alone cannot be the contributor. You have AI, you have IoT, you have quantum technology, and then you need to allow people to build hardwares for you, people to build softwares for you, people to solve those problems, and then the government. These to me are detractors. Accelerator, just solve this.
Thank you. Lexi?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you mentioned, Siju, particularly from the perspective of building better UI, UX experiences for consumers. And then also, this might be a bit controversial, but I think maybe talking less about the underlying technology and understanding more real-world use cases that actually connect with users. I think you brought up a great example with a lot of the fervor around AI now has mostly been driven by the fact that it's been made tangible for everyday users, where we're taking these complex LLMs and neural networks and machine learning algorithms out of the terminal and bringing it to search results for everyday users. That's something that everybody in this room, that my grandmother can understand. And so I think finding similar use cases in the Web3 space where we're talking less about, oh, this is what Web3 can do, here's what the underlying blockchain can do, and more about, oh, this will make you this will make you be able to monetize your Instagram search history, for example, just pulling something out of there. I think something that is much more tangible to users and has a really seamless onboarding UX experience is really going to be the biggest accelerator in this space. And I'm very excited because I think in the last few years, as some of that infrastructure has really caught up to some of the ideas, I think we're going to be seeing an explosion in this space. There's so many more layer 1 protocols out there besides just Bitcoin and Ethereum, which I would say the average layperson is already familiar with, that is trying to live out that vision and being able to actually send crypto payouts that are at similar speeds to our credit card networks right now. I think that reaching that point is going to be crucial for bringing more people into the Web3 revolution.
If I may just add, I think build it to fit to purpose, build it to fit to utility, build trust. If you address these, then I think you have acquired a larger set of people. Because if there is no trust in it, I don't think I would want to use it.
For us, for me, it's speed and ease of use, as you referenced. Like, there's what the people in this room can use easily. There's what I can do easily. There's what my dad can do easily. And when you get them on board, I think you're there. So I want to thank you both for your fantastic insight. And I want to, if there's any questions, I want to open up for questions. Yeah. Okay.